life a drag. I don't think that's right. I've really been the best of food. I did what I could, yeah. Of course I love you, baby. How I love you, darling. How I love you, baby. My love you, girl, little girl. Baby, since I've been loving you, yeah, I'm about to lose my worried mind. Oh, yeah. Everybody trying to tell me trying. Lord, let me tell, I really did the best I could. I've been working from 7 to 11 every night. I said it kind of makes life a drag, 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 drag. Lord! Oh, my tears, they fell like rain. Don't you hear that? Don't you hear the moaning? Don't you hear it? Don't you hear the moaning? Do you remember, Mama, when I knocked up on your door?
looks like people are slowly joining here. I think we're going to give everyone a couple more minutes down here before we start.
Might as well jump. Go ahead and jump. Get it in, jump. Go ahead and jump. 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 Jumping, what's that sound? Here she comes, full blast from top down. Hot shoe, burning down the avenue. Model citizens, zero discipline. Don't you know she's coming home to me? You lose her erection. I'll get her.
All right, everyone. It looks like people have pretty much all gotten here, so we'll go ahead and get started with today's meeting. We're going to do a few presentations today and present to a couple of people that are our past alumni of the aerospace program that have a lot more experience than we do when it comes to aerospace, and hopefully they'll have some pointers on how we make our decision for continuing with either the fungi sat or the power sat that we've been researching. But to get things started, I'm going to hand it off to John to kind of do the icebreaker.
So our icebreaker today is, who would you have dinner with, dead or alive? And as a backup, if we burn through that one too quickly, is ravioli a sandwich? Which, yeah. Joel, can you be host for the breakout rooms, or how do you want to do that? Also, Joel, you're muted right now.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I'm trying to assign breakout rooms right now.
Okay, cool.
It'll be like just a second. All right, and I kind of have 5 people or about 5 people in each room. All right. Yep, okay, here we go. I'm opening all rooms now. All right. Yep. I have not added some of the some of the like mentors and stuff to go to those rooms. They don't need to. I don't know. I guess Andrew, Gavin, and Katie, do you guys want to go to your breakout rooms for the breakout question? All right, awesome. Actually, I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Beth, you've joined us.
Yeah, I don't have like a formal Zoom login account, so I don't really know how to use Zoom too much. So I'm just kind of calling in. How's it going over in the central US right now?
Says the gal who lives in Santa Barbara, right?
Yeah, it's pretty sunny and warm here.
Is it smoky there?
It was a while ago. You know, we had kind of that freak lightning storm that happened all across California that caused like 800 wildfires or whatever. So that was, you know,
Yeah.
very 2020.
Right.
But yeah, no, most of them have cleared up kind of by now. I'm not really aware of any that are nearby.
Good, good. Yeah, we actually are having some pretty good weather right now, you know, the calm before the storm. I was expected to get really awful for Halloween, which just, you know, when the kids have all their little costumes, but I don't even know what Halloween is this year anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like it's, you know, gonna not be canceled, but, you know, like I can't imagine people are gonna want to come to the door, or people are gonna want their kids going from door to door.
Right.
yeah. So,
There's a
It's a good time to not have kids. No offense to anybody that does right now.
We're giving out virtual candy.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense.
actually, I had my sister put together these, I got some little bags and they're things like frogs that if you put them in the wall, they climb down the wall. And then there's little glow in the dark pop-ups and insects and, you know, all and a couple glow in the dark stickers, all non-candy stuff, you know, so they can take a bag like that and hopefully feel like that. And if nobody comes, they'll keep till next year. So
that makes sense.
So Beth, let me introduce you to everyone we have here. So Beth, and Beth, you can provide a little more information, but she's working at Northrop Grumman on satellites. In fact, are you still working on the backpack to go on a satellite to extend its life?
Yeah, so the mission extension vehicle, the MEV program, has actually launched both of our satellites for that. So I'm not working on any more of those right now. But that was essentially a deployable space arm that would latch onto other satellites that were either out of their orbit or kind of nearing their end of life. And so we would kind of, you know, interface with them and either move them back into their orbit, or if they're approaching end of life, we could move them into the graveyard orbit and then come back and, you know, perform that, you know, 50 or 80, however many more times we would need to. But, you know, docking satellites, it's challenging. But definitely my, you know, work with USIP helped me get there. So, you know, kind of being involved in programs such as these, I felt really helped get my foot in the door.
Oh, sorry, I realized I muted myself. So great, good. So the people that we've got here, so Joel Schaefer and John Heltzer are the, I guess the new USIC, then Roxat, now AXP leads. And so they're the ones who are leading the meeting today with the students and are doing a great job with that. John McClure is the person who the idea of doing this collaboration with middle school, high schools. This is his brainchild. So he's the one who's wanting us to help get younger students interested in aerospace, come to UNL and maybe actually build an aerospace industry in Nebraska. And then Sally Way is, maybe you know Sally or remember her. She does all the K-12 outreach and sets up all the camps and stuff. And actually, Sally, they're talking about that maybe we should have a CubeSat Education Day here in Nebraska. So we have something we may want to work with you on. So she's the one who, along with John, but did a bunch of the recruiting of the students that are involved. And then she's the one who guides us because she's far more familiar than the rest of us of how to work with this age group, right? What they like, don't like, that kind of thing, to help make it be meaningful for them. And then Maggie Schuster is new to me, but my understanding is that she wants to get involved and work with the students. And Joel and John were telling me a little bit of her background, but there's some sports broadcasting, there's some mathematics, there are a bunch of things in there that I can't remember all of it, but she wants to start working with the team. So I think that gets everybody should have, and then me, I'm just trying to help help the three ring circus keep moving, right? You know, the next act is set up. So
it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, as you know, so we are the request for proposal just came out this week. And so we're, even in a more preliminary stage than well, in some ways we're more preliminary because we have to put the proposal together. And yet we are a little bit more diving into the going through and deciding which project actually makes sense. And I don't know, and John McClure, you may have an opinion on this. If Florida's presenting 3 ideas, is there any reason we couldn't present 2 at the PDR?
That's, you know what? No, I don't think so. It's Kevin's the master of ceremonies there, so we ought to just give him a heads up, but no reason.
Okay. And so
And especially if we have some overlap, like Ben had said they were exploring bacteria, radiation eating bacteria. So, and we're looking at a radiation eating fungus. So wherever that stands, so it might be good for us to present 2 ideas.
Okay, great. And we just got joined by Taylor Curl. So, and so Taylor was part of, so Taylor, you just missed all the introductions while the kids are in there. There you are. While the students are in their icebreaker. I just saw Tim's face fade in and out there. So there, I see it, the ghost face. And Taylor's currently working with satellites as a propulsion engineer, right? A manager of the propulsion systems. And she actually just got the Promise Award from SSPI this week. So congratulations. So because you show so much promise, you have to guess what all the rest of us are since we went through introductions.
Speak every time I fumble something a little bit.
No. So real quick, Joel and John are the one. It's funny because I can see people are not the same relative to each other when they're looking at the screen. So Joel and John are to my right and left, but that doesn't mean anything as far as for you guys. But they're the ones who'll be leading the meeting today. John Helzer and Joel. And then John McClure is the one who brought the idea of doing this CubeSat with middle and high school students. Sally's got the K through 12 experience. Beth. And then Maggie is just joining the team and looking at how she can work with work with the students. And so that's kind of the crew we've got today.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi. And then of course, the students will come back from their icebreaker and then, you know, all bets are off.
Yeah, right. Then you really have to guess.
Yeah.
Just as a heads up too, especially specifically for Maggie, to the extent she's interested, eventually we're going to have to do some type of communications. So marketing, media, advertising. We even want to produce a video documenting this sort of journey. So not only we have something that is there in the archives, but also something that we can get launched either on PBS or, you know, for other schools to take a look at. So we need everything from a script to editing, because most of it will be editing and maybe teaching a couple of the students to shoot video and stuff like that. So that's some of the media stuff to be done after we get the proposal.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I don't know if you have an idea for the equipment that you want to use, but I also have access to the J School on campus, which has a bunch of like audio recording and like really good cameras and stuff like that. So if we need equipment at all for any sort of media production, just let me know and I can check it out through the school. So yeah, for sure. I'm definitely down to do that kind of stuff. I'm very excited. It'll be fun.
Yeah, great. What we really need is someone to take ownership and be the mentor for that. So you consider that. I'm always good at shoveling stuff off on people, right, Karen?
Yes. And actually we had in the meeting that Joel and John and I had earlier before we started, we were talking about, so Maggie, do you go by Maggie or MJ?
I go by MJ. I know it says Maggie on my
Yeah.
Zoom thing. I put it in as like my official university name and I don't know how to change it. But yeah.
Yeah, you actually have to go to your Zoom account as opposed to being able to do it in the meeting. And actually, it's funny. I guess everybody else changed theirs back. I have any Karen Stelling because I changed it and haven't changed it back because we're working in Florida and North Carolina. And so when we have a call with them, then we change it to put our state name there so we know who's from which group. So yeah. But yeah, we will try and call you MJ. I saw the Maggie there and I'm like, okay, but I thought that they'd said, I knew they'd mentioned your last name. So that's where, and so we were talking about a role for you. And there's another, John, there's another student, Henderson. Let's see, Gentillon, is that how you say it?
It's something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Very French pronunciation and I'm German, so. Anyway, who also might be involved in that we're going to talk with about also that communications position, some of that other stuff and figure out how we can divvy that up. So, and then as long as we're doing this, John and Joel decided that rather than going to KSC, they'd much rather have Kevin and Angela come here and work on the proposal after the semester's over. So, yeah, I think those were the main things we talked about. So Taylor, we'll make you do this again, but what are you doing right now with satellites?
So I'm a few different roles, so I'll try to keep it brief. I really got my footing as an electrical engineer. That's been what a lot of my development work has been in. So I'm a lead electric.
Taylor, there's a lot of static in when you talk. Do you know?
Is there?
Yeah.
Mars,
Let me try a different.
Mars is a long way, Karen.
Mars. Yeah. Oh, well, so both Taylor and Beth are in California, so we.
What's up, Joel?
Hey, how's the icebreaker going? Are you guys like about to the end, or where are you guys
We're
at?
done. We've
You
been
guys are
waiting for
done?
the room to end.
Okay, because we had some people join in it, and we're just like kind of talking to them separately.
Okay.
If you
I
guys
just
like,
assumed you would kill the room at some point.
yeah, I'm going to in a little bit. I just wanted to go ahead and like double check, um, how each of the rooms are going, but I'll close them in just a little bit. That's all good. How do I?
Be a senior vice president of Northrop Grumman. And after he left the Air Force, and he's currently the executive director of the Nebraska Research Institute. He's also on the board of directors of the SAC Museum. And John actually met with Jono Henson to brief him on the status of the project. So you should also be the vice commander of Space Command. So you someday research his name in the annals of Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, what was his first name?
Robert. Yeah, you can actually Google him or even Wikipedia him. Those of us who are famous enough have a Wikipedia account. I'm somewhere on the dark web.
Yeah, I'll have to add him on LinkedIn and see what we have in common.
Yeah. Tell him you're working with the Nebraska CubeSat, or you worked with the Nebraska CubeSat project, and he'll click in, won't he, John?
Definitely.
You might join us for the PDR. If you guys could give some thought, if you would be open to virtually having a couple of guests on the virtual part of the presentation. If you remember, John, we said if he was interested, we'd figure out how to invite him into one of these sessions or the PDR.
Yeah.
And since he helped arrange the museum as our host for the PDR, we might want to do that.
Okay.
Do you guys hear me better now? Sorry to
Yeah, that's
interrupt,
better.
John.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Much better.
Yeah.
I'll-
Zoom happens, you know.
That's the name of the game these days.
Mhm.
Sorry, continue. I just want to make sure that I had a better connection.
No, we were just killing time waiting for you to tell us about your life.
Oh, sure.
Wow.
So I'm primarily an electric propulsion engineer. I'm the lead development engineer on the NASA JPL Psyche spacecraft. So my company and JPL are building a satellite together to go to an asteroid. And electric propulsion is the primary propulsion element for that mission. So I've been super lucky to be in charge of developing a new, it's called a Hall effect stationary plasma thruster. So we've been developing that for deep space, and it'll be the first time those type of thrusters and that type of propulsion is used in deep space. So it's really exciting. I'm also a program manager for 2 NASA tipping point studies. So tipping point studies are aimed to bring technology readiness levels of all sorts of different elements. It can really be anything up to the tipping point where they're ready for flight, right? So bringing TRLs up to like a 7-8 readiness rather than 4, 5, 6. So I'm working on a xenon refueling project and a 6 kilowatt Hall thruster development. So still staying in the electric propulsion family, but just moving into a different type of role. So I'm not the development engineer, I'm the program manager. So that's a bit different. And then finally, I'm what we call a guidance, navigation, and control lead on a new type of satellite. We call it a bus, which is really the build of the satellite at my company. So we're moving towards this modular architecture where we try to compartmentalize subsystems and then stack them all together. And so I'm the lead systems engineer for a few different groups. So GNC is comprised of propulsion, orbit dynamics, dynamics controls analysis, our pointing team, which controls like our payload, right, and what the communication system is doing. And now I'm drawing a blank. I should know this. Shouldn't I know this like the back of my hand? Saturday morning. Anyway, there's about 5 subsystems that sort of report to me, and then I report back to the program and just sort of make sure that we're creating a cohesive design. But that's what my weeks are filled with right now.
It sounds like you need some more work.
Yeah, I'm pretty bored. It's not a lot to do.
So we had the students just joined us, and so they heard part of your description. And I don't, John and Joel, should we just go ahead and have Beth introduce herself to the students, and then Taylor maybe give some of that front end part again? Okay.
I think that'd be great.
So Taylor, did you see everybody pop in?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. If you want to kind of cover some of the stuff that they didn't hear on what you're doing, and I'll just mention for the team. So SSPI, correct me if I've got this right or wrong, is Space Satellite Professionals International. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so that is it's like the professional, if it's, I guess, is it it really is the international society where most of the folks who work with satellites belong?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have an award. So Taylor just graduated, what, 3-4 years ago from the University of Nebraska, and they have a thing where they recognize each year 25 people who are under 35 years old who show outstanding contributions already into the space and satellite industry. And then they choose 3 Promise Award winners. And Taylor was just chosen this week for a Promise Award out of all the people under 35 who are doing satellite work, space and satellite work. So we're lucky to have her, and she came from here. So Taylor, if you want to give a little bit of that start of the background that you were giving.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Karen. So I am a propulsion and systems engineer, and I work for a company called Maxar Technologies. We used to be called Space Systems Loral, or SSL, but there's been some transformation over the past few years. So if you see things about Maxar in the news, that's where I work. In my role, I do a lot of electric propulsion development. So electric propulsion, at least in the commercial spacecraft world, is really focused, or my company rather, is really focused on what we call Hall effect stationary plasma thrusters. So that's what a lot of my work to date has been on. My biggest contribution there has been working with NASA JPL on a spacecraft that JPL and my company are building together. It's called the Psyche spacecraft that'll travel to the Psyche asteroid. And electric propulsion will be the primary propulsion element on that bus. And so my team worked to develop the Hall thrusters to be able to work in deep space and at really low power so that they can support the mission all the way to the asteroid. And then I think people kind of tuned in after that. That's not my only role. I also do some program management for NASA tipping point studies, and also systems engineering for a new type of spacecraft build.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, Taylor and Beth were both, there was a NASA program, USIP, Undergraduate Student Instrumentation Program, and they were both had lead roles in that. And that's where we sent an experimental payload up into space, and it was recovered. But that team always wanted to get to do a CubeSat, and we couldn't figure out how to do it and how to afford it. So you guys are super lucky, because they're kind of jealous of you right now, even if it sounds like they're doing neat things. So Beth, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as Karen said, I was involved in the USIP program, kind of with the hands-on experience with the deployable space part of that experimental payload, I kind of ended up moving over to orbital ATK, which, you know, kind of later got bought out by Northrop Grumman. So still very much working on not only deployable space applications, but also kind of just custom satellite components. Everything that my location builds is almost purely one of a kind. So it's a lot of fun kind of going through designing, building, and then testing everything that we need. And then, of course, supporting integration and testing onto the spacecraft level as required. But a lot of troubleshooting and kind of figuring out how are we going to build it, you know, what are the designs that we need to meet to be able to get the good product that we, you know, have promised the customer. So I'm just an engineer out there, out here, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's my little takeaway.
Yeah, and I want to say something else about Beth, which is that the job that she got, I think they were looking for somebody with several years experience, you know, like 5 years experience, and she was tenacious. They weren't calling her back. And so she kept calling them, and she got an interview set up. But part of that interview, she talked about what she had done with USIP with us, with the project management, and how she'd learned how to do a project schedule. And they said, oh, really? Well, what's the critical path? And so she explained it to them. And so part of her working on these projects with us helped her get the job. So
yeah, it really did. You know, being on USIP really was kind of the driving factor that put my foot in the door. Because yeah, actually, Karen, I had forgotten. When I finally got a hold of somebody from HR to try to say like, yeah, you know, I have this experience, even before I could say that, you know, being that the company and the position was based out in California, even though it was functionally equivalent to what we were doing in Nebraska, you know, the HR lady was like, oh, well, are you just trying to move to California? And I was like, no, I have 2 years of experience working on, you know, like experimental payloads for deployable and solar arrays. And so that's really kind of what caught their attention. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, let's, you know, get you for a full interview then. So it definitely helped, you know, just the various skills that you learn through these sort of platforms.
Yeah. And so the USIP, basically that was NASA's name for a project of where we got to design, and where they gave us $200,000 to help us put together an experimental payload and launch it, and then try and get that data from space before it was suborbital, but it went into space before it crashed in the ocean. So, and then we retrieved it. So this CSLI, this CubeSat that we're doing, it's a similar thing where we're looking for a grant so that instead of just putting a payload up on a rocket and having it come back down, it actually is a satellite. And so you're getting to do kind of like the next step in what we did in our project that Beth and Taylor did. So do you guys have any questions for them?
I guess, Karen, I'll echo why people think, right? The experience from USIP and all of that research, right? Beth's story is not unique. I feel like the same way. You guys are super, super lucky that you're one, getting this experience at all, because it's going to put you far ahead of your peers when you do graduate, right, and go into industry. It's, I mean, truly unparalleled, and especially learning how to sit in front of a NASA board and everything else. You guys are doing great things, but the fact that you get to do CubeSat is really awesome. And it's going to be tough, but it's going to be worth it, because that's so, so cool. So I'm excited for you.
I have a quick question for Taylor and Beth. What made you interested in aerospace when you were a 8th, 9th, 10th grader? What Why did you choose this path?
Beth, do you want to go first?
So I would say for me, I didn't necessarily get interested in aerospace at that age. I remember when I was really young, I had a photo book of kind of like all the nebulas and different constellations. And I thought that was just like the coolest. And I think, you know, kind of the concept of space exploration, you know, really always kind of stayed with me, you know, even though I got into kind of automotives in high school, you know, kind of the concept behind building something and more engineering, you know, rather than, you know, doing band, which I also, I guess, did do in high school. But I would say really kind of the drive was always there. And I think that was sparked kind of at a young age for me, you know, sometime in elementary school, I guess.
Taylor?
Yeah. So I think my story is kind of similar. I was a space kid, right? From a really young age. When I was like 5 years old, my parents would be like, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" I was like, "Rocket scientist." Didn't know what that meant, but but that's kind of the same thing for me. So I didn't do much in high school, right, to pursue that. I knew that I was still interested in aerospace, and that, you know, again, I was a very odd kid. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to college and study aerospace engineering, and then that's what I'm going to do. And like, who knows that? Most people don't. So I think that I was very odd in that way. But I didn't have a lot of opportunities in high school to explore that any deeper. So I had to wait until college and then sort of dive in and make sure that I still was in something that I enjoyed. And I, again, got lucky and I landed where I wanted to be. But in high school, I did pursue other engineering things where I was on like a robotics team and things like that, to just sort of make sure that engineering was actually where I wanted to go. And it was. And so I think CubeSats are way cooler than any robot you're going to build. So this is like a really incredible opportunity. But yeah, there was never really a question for me if I wanted to be in aerospace. I got really lucky that where I thought my passions were aligned with reality.
So I think we hijacked the meeting from John and Joel. So please take a lead from here.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
It was really exciting getting to hear like some of your guys' experience with USIP and where you guys are now. It's kind of like you guys are legends around here. We hear the stories, but we maybe not in the greatest detail, but it's great to finally hear that and see you guys and meet you guys. But let me see if I can share the screen again here. But
Wait, how is the icebreaker, guys? What are our thoughts from that?
Let me, if I can bring it to participants real quick. I guess, Michael, I know you had some people in your room. Do you want to, were there any notable ones that you think should share?
With us, we kind of got away from the main question pretty quickly,
Mhm.
and we started discussing is cereal soup. Way longer than we actually took to talk about raviolis. Tegan has some pretty strong thoughts about cereal being a soup. If she wants to talk for that.
Yeah, we'd love to hear Tegan.
Well, I guess I base a lot of these off of culinary stuff, in my opinion. That's how it's made is a large part of it for me. So soups generally consist of a broth, and I don't consider milk to be a broth. We talked about this, and they were like, "Well, what if it's like flavored milk? Then technically, wouldn't it be a broth?" And then, yeah, I have nothing else to say.
So what is a broth?
Well, a broth is a vegetable or a meat that is sort of steamed into water, and so it gets that kind of flavor. You know, there's like, for example, some common ones are like chicken broth or like standard vegetable broth, which usually has things like carrots or broccoli in it.
That makes sense. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's a very strong point, I have to say, Tegan, and it looks like Dylan also agrees. But kind of moving on with a little bit of what else we're going to talk about today. So just briefly, we're going to go over the PDR, the preliminary design review. That's going to be happening in about 2 weeks. We have a few more details on that and some questions to ask you guys about that. And then we're going to present some of the research that both teams did this week with our special guests, Taylor and Beth. And then if we have any time left, we're going to go over the proposal a little bit because it was finally released about two months late, I want to say. Still released though on Monday, and we did some individual research on that for the AXP team, and hopefully we can share some of those important details with you as we go on. But just looking at this diagram for the timeline again, we still are in the beginning here. We are nearing this first checkpoint, the PDR, and it's exciting where we should go from there. So in 2 weeks, like I said, on that Saturday, we will be having the PDR with the Florida team as well as the North Carolina team. And the Florida team and the North Carolina team, they're meeting in Florida at the Kennedy Space Center, and they're going to have kind of a board of NASA scientists and researchers that are going to be able to kind of ask targeted questions about the research that they want to do on this CubeSat and give them helpful hints and suggestions for what they can change to make their proposal more feasible and more likely to get selected. So the thing about that is it's supposed to go from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's when their doors are open. But the thing is, we are the last ones to present after Florida and North Carolina. But we'd really appreciate it if you guys can tune in for that. So we will have more details for you in the future. We'll send out some emails and whatnot. But we are planning on having it at the SAC Museum. And if you guys are willing to attend in person, because coronavirus is still going on, we understand if you don't, we will have a virtual option as well. We'd like you guys to arrive there sometime between 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we kind of want to hear back from you guys to see what you are planning to do, either attending in person or virtual, and make sure to check with your parents about that. And we like to hear somewhere, early in the week, hopefully by Monday, if that's possible. But we'll be sending out some more information in emails and in Slack. Something else that we have kind of about that PDR, it's kind of going to be our first in-person meeting if you guys are willing to come in person. So we're thinking about having maybe a few speakers, just like we've had at the last couple meetings. And I believe someone we were looking into having is General Hinson, which either John, do you have any more details about that? And if you, just to see if they're interested in that. All right, my bad.
Which John?
Either one. I guess John Hauser. I know you gave a little presentation to him, right? Do you have any key details?
So I don't feel like I know him super well. John McClure knows him a lot better than I do, but he seems like he was very interested in our project, and he also seems like a very down to earth kind of dude. So I think he'd be a good speaker. I don't know, John McClure, you know him a lot better than I do.
Yeah, he would. I think he would, if he's available, would be very interesting because of his background. I think there's a number of folks that we can choose from, but it'd be really nice to hear from you guys as to what is it that you want to hear, rather than us say, here's who we want you to listen to. So things that are interested, subject matter, things like that. And we'll see if we can get some of the most interesting folks to to present to you.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, kind of, we'll be sending out more information about that as we do learn more. Like I said, but kind of where we were thinking of going from here, we have some past suggestions for presentations, kind of the PDRs in the past, actually from when Taylor and Beth were on the USIP team. They had the same type of the PDRs and different checkpoints where they had NASA scientists give them suggestions. And we have some of those to share, but in the sake of time, making sure that we have time to present and to talk about some of the research, I think we might just go directly towards the team presentations, if that sounds good with everyone.
Let me jump in real quick. So please talk to your parents because we won't be providing the transportation. So you will have to, they will need to get you there or work with somebody to get you there. The other thing is we will look at COVID protocols. And so I'm sure we'll all be wearing face masks, and then
Certainly.
the rest of that we'll still be figuring out. And we'll plan to have lunch for you, which is part of why we need to know how many people we should plan on having be there. Okay.
Certainly. All right. Well, so if there's the mushroom sat and the power sat, is there either team that feels really strongly about they should go first? No? Well, I guess since I've worked a little bit closely with the fungi sat or the mushroom sat, then I might just volunteer you guys. If Elsa, do you want to go ahead and share that presentation? All right. Awesome. I'm excited to see you guys all present today.
Okay. Our payload idea is astromycology, which is the study of mushrooms in space. So the fungi that we chose is the Cladosporium spirosporum. Cladosporium is a radiotrophic fungi that can use radiation as an energy source, which generally reduces radiation in the area. It was found in the Chernobyl site along with other very similar fungi in the same genus. An experiment was recently done on the International Space Station using the same species to see if it could be used to protect future astronauts. It's generally a darkly colored fungi that reproduces largely by itself. It uses a chemical called melanin, which colors our skin and hair to turn radiation from dangerous into an energy it can actually use. This process is called radiosynthesis. It's very similar to photosynthesis, but instead of using sun and light energy, it uses radiation. There are very many similar species in this same family. They actually used to be classified as the same species until more research was done. The optimal climate temperature is about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, though it can live in temperatures varying from anywhere from 23 degrees to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It survives mostly the best in humid climates. So if we could make it more humid for it, that would be better. Our motivation for our experiment is it could help protect future astronauts from dangerous space radiation. It could be cheaper, and it could be a renewing source of protection for astronauts and radiation-sensitive equipment. This is shielding that could get exponentially stronger over time instead of weaker like most things we use today, because we could grow it in space. This science could potentially help humanity expand to other planets easier, cheaper, and faster. It could be produced easier in space because we wouldn't need to manufacture it, we just need to grow it. On long space missions, we could save a lot of space and weight by bringing a small amount of fungi spores instead of heavy metals and other radiation equipment. Right now, we mostly use lead shielding to protect anything radiation sensitive in space. So if we could use something that's a lot lighter and a lot easier to make, that would be great.
So in order to grow this fungus, in order for it to prosper in space, we would have, our experiment would be having radiation sensitive equipment in the, or radiation sensor of some kind in the payload, and then the fungus on certain sides, and then we can measure the amount of radiation coming in, and then the amount of radiation coming through the fungus to see how much it reduces the radiation. And then we'll also need to see how well it can grow in space. So, next slide. Sorry. One of our major problems would be water. It is zero tolerant, which means it can survive in a climate or in a humidity of less than pure water. So it's about 1/5 lower than pure water. And we don't know currently how to store it for the possible 4 months without human interaction. But if we can find a way to water it, based on my research, we should be able to grow it in space. One possible method would be to freeze dry it and then rehydrate it when it reaches space. This has been done before. We just need more research on how to do it for this specific type of fungus. And then as long as it's not jostled too much on the way to space, it should be able to get there without any problems. On the way there, it'll experience a multitude of different air pressures and temperatures, anywhere from 250 degrees to negative 250 degrees. However, it should survive the trip as long as it's in the rocket and it's not jostled too much. The way to regulate the temperature and stop it from jostling too much would be ideal. So in the past, it was sent to the ISS to see if it could grow in zero gravity. It was able to grow, and we want to test if we can grow it in space without any human interaction, so they can research other things instead of having to spend time growing this fungus. If the results prove positive, this could lead to many great discoveries for space travel and better ways to protect astronauts and radiation-sensitive equipment from radiation. And then this is some of our preliminary ideas. The one on the right, left is the one that we all came up with, and then the right is one that Dylan came up with.
I guess if you guys want to go back to the before slide, do you want to explain a little bit what some of those different sensors and drawings are?
Yeah. So the big blue box is basically the whole CubeSat, but these are two different ideas inside of it. The red is like thermal protection to help shield it from too much varying temperature. The yellow box is a camera, so we could see what's going on. Our two radiation sensors on each side. The one on the left would be measuring like how much radiation is protecting, like how much radiation is coming from space, like on a normal basis, and the one on the right would be measuring how much radiation the fungi is blocking. The little purple rectangle on the way right is traditional radiation shielding, so it won't mess with our statistics on how much radiation the fungi is blocking. The green is the fungi in the middle, and the two black dots are like maybe some kind of system to help grow it, like with water and stuff.
Certainly. And Dylan, I know you had your diagram on the right, and I know it's a similar idea, but do you want to explain that and what you were thinking a little bit?
The only real difference with mine is I thought we might be able to have a cube of the fungi around pure melanin in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
because you need 9 to regulate radiation down to like normal levels on like Earth levels.
Mhm.
You would need 9 inches worth of the fungi. So if we were to have some sort of like, this would simulate somebody eating something that would also give them high amounts of melanin.
Yeah.
Like some sort of like, there are like mushrooms that will actually give you higher amounts of melanin, and that's really the only major difference with mine.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. I don't know.
Hey guys, I have one question. What size of CubeSat are you thinking?
I think a 1U is what we were doing.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Just curious. Thanks.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Are you guys planning on having the mushrooms kind of open to space, or are you gonna have an environment for it to grow in currently?
We were gonna try to give it more of an environment to grow in, because the temperatures could potentially kill it, and I think that's the main problem, is just the temperatures of space might kill it. So we need
Okay.
some kind of protection from that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Just wondering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just a couple more slides, right?
Yeah. Pretty sure these are
Yeah,
done.
this is my slide. Okay, so I had a question about how CubeSats and like space junk, to see if that would be a problem. CubeSats orbit in low Earth orbit, which is like 2,000 kilometers above Earth or below, and CubeSats orbit there. And 70% of space junk is in low Earth orbit. So I wanted to see if like maybe it'd be affected by like space junk. Well, because we want to make sure a CubeSat doesn't get damaged by anything. I saw what the ISS used to like protect against it, and they used a Whipple shield, which is like a type of hyper velocity shield. But they look really big and really expensive, so we couldn't really use that. And in my research, I haven't really found any incidents of like CubeSats colliding with space junk. Most of the articles I found was like, would like CubeSats contribute more to space junk, not if they would be affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
But a 1U CubeSat isn't very big, so it has a smaller chance of getting hit, and most of the damage, if all, would be affected to outside materials. So I don't think we have to worry too much about that. And I also did some research on radiation. I'm sure you know this, but radiation is energy transformed in the form of particles or waves. And what's dangerous about radiation, it can knock out electrons of atoms. Ionizing radiation is a type of radiation that's strong enough to knock out an electron. There are 3 types of space radiation: galactic cosmic radiation, trapped radiation, and solar energetic particles. But we're safe here on Earth mainly because of Earth's magnetic field, which blocks most of the radiation. Galactic cosmic radiation is charged particles emitted through outside stars, like not in our solar system. Most of it's not very dangerous. Occasionally we'll get like a big wave, but not very often. Trapped radiation is like radiation getting trapped inside Earth, mainly in Van Allen belts. There's 2 main belts. There's an inner one, which is closer to Earth, and an outer one, which is farther away. CubeSats are in the inner belt, so they could be affected. We've seen similar activity on Jupiter. And then there's solar energetic particles. They come from the sun, and they're mainly caused by solar waves. The radiation could affect some technology, but where the CubeSats have protected some, because in low Earth orbit is still really close to the magnetic field. That's it for that. And what we want to study, we want a sensor capable of recording the amount of radiation inside the CubeSat for the mushroom experiment. We want a sensor that can hopefully measure all types. something we can get preferably easy and is able to transfer information back to Earth. We're not sure what device we could use. We need to like go to some companies about that and see what they've used and talk to more experienced people. And that's all I gotta say.
These were some questions that we were kind of trying to answer. We did with most of the other slides. A lot of these we need to reach out to some experts to see like what we could use to protect from temperatures and how we're going to keep the fungi alive. So we'd have to reach out to some more people to answer some of these. And for this question, how much would it all cost? We'd also have to ask some more people to see how we would get a hold of some of the fungi and some of the equipment.
Mhm.
And if we had a yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions?
Exactly.
We should ask them.
I have one question. So are you planning on like measuring the radiation prior to passing through prior to measuring it? Like I know you have a radiation sensor before it goes through the mushroom, but then do you have one even before that? Because I feel like to get like any meaningful results, you kind of have to compare the radiation levels to something normal.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we were going for with the first sensor. That's not like our hanging out plan yet. We wanted to find a place to put the first sensor where it would just measure normal space radiation. And then the other sensor would be on the other side to see how much of that space radiation the fungi would block.
Yeah, I mean, because I saw in the diagram that there was one like even outside of all that. Because I was thinking like you might want to measure it after it passes through like normal radiation shielding equipment, so you can compare the mushrooms results to normal radiation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't know if you had something like that.
Certainly.
I was going to ask, how big is this? Like, how much space is it going to take up inside our CubeSat?
The fungi itself is relatively small. If back here, this is this Petri dish one. This is these two down here are like about the amount. See, because the one on the left, that one picture is a microscopic picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's relatively small. So it shouldn't take up too much room. The things that would take up the most room would probably be the sensors or the thermal shielding, maybe the camera. But the fungi itself wouldn't take up too much room. It's mostly the equipment we'd use to measure it.
Okay.
Also, probably the life like water and stuff like that. Life support stuff would take up room.
Yeah.
More than the fungi.
Also, I don't remember if you covered this or not, but did you talk about where we can purchase this mushroom?
We said we'd have to see, like, talk to like more experts to see. It's a fairly common fungi. We just need to find somewhere we could get it. It grows in like human places. It grows like all over the world. It sometimes be found like just in houses. Sometimes it'll grow like by sinks and things like that. So it's fairly common. We just need to find a good place we could get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that note, do you know if it's hazardous to humans? Right? Can you freely interact with it without it being dangerous?
It can be. Some species, similar species, can like. It can be kind of like an allergen, so it can be kind of like dust or pollen to some people. So we might need to get a little bit of protection from that. So, but yeah, it's kind of like an allergen to some people, not all. Some people it's just fine, but others it can like irritate their nose and stuff.
I did a little research on that too, and it said like in extreme cases it can cause asthma, but that's very rare. So, and that's over a very prolonged exposure to it.
Yeah, that would be like if it was in your home, if it was growing somewhere where you couldn't see it, and you were living there for about 6 months, I think.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Beth, do you have any questions?
I guess one suggestion I maybe have is you could maybe reach out to the UNL like plant department. I would imagine that the agriculture, you know, college would probably have some good leads on how to get your hands on some of these and probably some of the risks associated with them.
Yeah.
That's probably my only suggestion. I think it's really interesting. Kind of use for it. So I think there's potential, definitely.
I think I had one more, if I can offer one more other just thought and something to consider. Electronics, and especially space electronics and water, do not get along well. And so you guys have already, you're talking about controlling the temperature and everything, which is great, but your like water containment system is going to have to be really robust. Otherwise you might destroy your payload from just carrying your water.
Yeah.
Not that it's not possible. It's just you should weigh that equally with your temperature control, I think.
Taylor, would either you or Beth have any thoughts on how they might build that or design the water system?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Just off the top of my head, if there was a way to perfectly, I don't know, seal the fungus in something, right? And that environment was already hydrated, maybe that would be sufficient. So you don't have to carry extra water. That would be my first thought, but maybe I'm misunderstanding how the fungus consumes water. Maybe it needs a constant supply.
We'd have to kind of test that to see how much water it needs.
Yeah.
Sorry. Have you guys looked into like self-sustained terrariums? Sorry, geez Louise. Like there are a lot of plants and like little terrariums that people have in their homes that are basically just like a glass jar or closed glass container, and you kind of water it once, and if everything goes well, it's supposed to take care of itself. I don't know if you guys have looked into that or how it would work with the fungus. I don't know if it has to be a multi-plant kind of system or if you guys could implement something like that.
That's a good idea.
I think we should test something like that. That'd be a cool experiment. That would provide useful information.
Certainly. And I don't know. So people have been sending me some messages. I haven't been able to look at all of them, but it sounds like someone was able to actually just did a few Google search and found some freeze-dried versions of this fungi, as well as the biosafety level is a level 1, so the most safe, if that clarifies anything. But I guess additionally, just do you guys have any suggestions for how we go about the process of like choosing and finding radiation sensors?
I think we used Geiger counters on RockSat experiments.
Mhm.
So those are they're pretty cheap, they're easy to find, and they're easy to interact with. So I think you guys are on the right track.
Yeah, Kevin had that. He didn't say it in his presentation, but it is. I think he found. I think that was one of the ones he found.
Are you guys
Yeah, it was.
hoping to differentiate between the types of radiation?
It
Not
would
really.
depend. We would if we could, but if it took too much room to do that, then one type of radiation would be good.
I don't think it would be really necessary. It'd just be cool.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I agree. And I think, I mean, you guys are trying to accomplish a lot already, right? And just radiation, right? Having a radiation sensor period would probably give you a lot of information, and trying to weed out the different types. I think even in like industry, right? We just say radiation, put it under like one umbrella. And call it good. So that might be one way where you can like simplify things and just compartmentalize and make your lives a little bit easier while still accomplishing your overall goal.
Yeah.
Remember, when NASA evaluates your proposal, one of the requirements is it feasible to be successful? So you might want to think about, and Taylor and Beth, as you kind of sleep overnight on this, and we know you're going to think about it for the next 2 years for us, is what do you think the feasibility of success is at some point? It's too early for you to tell, but feasibility is going to be very important.
Certainly, yeah. But I guess on that note, are there any other comments specifically regarding feasibility before we move on to the other payload idea? No? All right. Well, if someone from the power sat wants to take over the sharing side of things, love to see a little bit of what you guys did this past week, some of the research that you've done.
I can probably share my screen.
All right, awesome.
Notice the logo is very good. It says perovskite payloads. So I don't remember. I think one of you guys is going to tackle the overview.
Yeah, I was going to talk about overview. So our general overview, our experiment is we're going to be testing perovskite solar cells, which is just kind of an alternative solar energy source. And we're going to be testing if that can get us more power than a traditional solar panel. We have a lot of slides going over how perovskites work and kind of what we need to make them work and how we get them and all that. So some of the advantages to perovskites is that they're really lightweight and foldable. In some cases, they can have increased power consumption. There is specifically one case where they were launched on a suborbital launch, and they were even able to get like power when they were on the dark side of the Earth, where they were getting power like from the reflection off the moon. Mainly, they're able to capture, I think it was like blue and purple photons that traditional solar cells can't. They also have like a smaller environmental footprint because they take a lot less resources to make. And they're relatively new. There have been some studies over them, but there's still lots of new research that we would be able to find about them. And survivability is also kind of a big issue because they can have short lifespans. So that'd be another issue we would be able to like do research about.
All of them are one use because like Florida and North Carolina all want to launch ours together, to answer your question from last time, Katie. So all of them should be one use.
Absolutely. So just a little bit about what we're doing. So our main two goals are to measure the power output of perovskite solar cells versus normal cells, and also measure the lifetime of perovskite cells. The possible ways we would do this, what we were thinking is that we'd have an array of half regular cells and half perovskite cells. That would kind of work as a kind of a contingency plan, because in case the perovskite cells don't end up working or they work less than we'd expect, having normal solar cells will allow us to still do the orbital decay part of our experiment as well. And we've also talked about the possibility of doing a folding array, because perovskites are a lot thinner than normal solar panels. And so we could have more area and even more power consumption than regular solar arrays if we folded them. So I think, Robert, you're going to talk about this slide.
Yeah, about most of the stuff last week, but just for a refresher, there are different types of the purview of perovskites, and how you figure out each type is you basically combine one thing from column A, from column B, and from column X3, and yeah. Matthew brought up a lot of this, but for the perovskite solar cells, they increase power to about 32.2%, which is around a 19.2 boost in observing light, which would grant around a 5% power boost. It absorbs blue and purple photons, which regular silicon can't absorb. They have higher efficiency and effectiveness than regular solar cells. They require about half the 50% less materials than regular solar cells. And they were, as we read earlier, they were first tested in space and kept getting power even with no sunlight.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember who's going to talk about what is needed.
I can go for that. I know I was going to do the manufacturing, so I could just do this too.
Yeah.
So far as when we say CubeSat parts, I think we literally meant in that case like the CubeSat. So just the stuff you would need for the normal experiment, but instead of regular solar cells, either half solar cells and a half perovskite, or just perovskite. And then obviously the power monitoring system to measure the output. And then as for the actual cells, we could either manufacture it ourselves or buy a kit. And if we want to buy a kit, there's a website called Solaronics that actually, they do a lot of different solar cell experiments, but they do a lot with perovskite. And you can go to them and just straight up buy a kit. However, they market these kits as for researchers. And so it's not exactly clear what is all included in the kit. But they have them, and these run about $230 to $250. Or if we want to manufacture them ourselves, there are several different methods to commonly manufacture perovskite cells. But the most cost-efficient way to do it is called spin coating, which is where you have a very, very fast spinning metal plate, usually about 5,000 RPM. And after you make your the perovskite, it's a fluid first. Once you make the solution, you drip it onto the center of the plate, and then it spreads out as it spins. You let that dry, then you do it again, and then you bake it. And then after you're done baking, you have the cell. Now, I compiled a list of all the different chemicals we need to actually do this from scratch. And if you just buy them off the internet in the most readily available quantities, it comes out to be about $527, not including any of the equipment. And the research paper that I was reading, the cell that they made was 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. But after talking to some people in the chemistry department, we could get at least probably half of these materials from our UNL chemistry department, and that means we wouldn't have to pay for 100 grams of something if we only need, 1.5. So if we buy it off the internet, it's about $527 to buy the total chemicals, but in all likelihood, it'll probably be about half of that. But yeah, so we can either buy a kit to make them from the kit or make them ourselves. But then, yeah, and then on top of that, we would need regular solar panels to test the output and see where it differs there. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, can I interrupt on that? So so either way you're making the cell, it's just whether you buy a kit to make a cell or buy the chemicals, or
that's what it looks like. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, say again.
I said that's what it's looking like.
Okay.
There are a lot of companies that are doing work with perovskites, but they're mainly universities. So you can, like I said, you can buy the perovskites in their components, but at least I couldn't find a company that was just selling perovskite solar cells, but maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough. But that's what it's looking like, yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
For sure.
Something kind of along that same vein, actually, that I talked to John Helzer about was finding a company to sponsor the product. So if there's some way you can find if somebody's trying to make a prototype, so it's not like officially released to the market, and they want to, test, have a real world application of their prototype, and then obviously, we would get it for free, ideally.
Okay, definitely.
Something
That's a
like
great
that
idea.
as well.
Definitely.
Okay. I wrote that down and I'll look into that. Thank you. That's a great idea. Thank you so much.
So now that we looked at the manufacturing, here's just a little figure that shows the efficiency on the left plotted over time. As you can see, perovskites are pretty new to the game compared to other solar cells that have been around for decades. But if you can also see, their efficiency has risen very quickly in just a few years. And that indicates that if we continue developing, they should become even more efficient than the solar panels we currently have.
All right. So here we just have some advantages, which we've kind of talked about them a little bit, but it's just kind of an overview. They're pretty new. On the last slide, they're about 2013 is whenever they became at least noticed. They're thinner and lighter, so that way we might be able to fold them out into an array. Hopefully, since it's so new, but hopefully it would help us to get accepted by NASA. And then the environmental impact, because they require less to be created, is less than normal silicone. And then some important research and information can be gained, whether they are very positive and have higher efficiency, or if they don't, we can either scratch them off the list or need to do more research.
Mm-hmm.
So as Andrew said, they're very new. NASA has been using them. They've been looking into them for missions to Mars for the Artemis mission, and they can be also, as Michael said, as a liquid. And so 1 liter of that liquid solution equals about 1 megawatt of solar panel, which is a lot more energy required to run the ISS. And so for our folding findings, NASA has been doing that a little bit too. Brian T. Trees has been looking into that. And so it would make very large arrays easier to produce and create without astronauts having to go into space and actually working on it. So both of these are obviously still in early stages of development. They haven't been used very often. But from what it seems like NASA has been looking into or just researching both of these.
I think this is me. But so since we're kind of testing its efficiency, like how much it increases the efficiency of regular solar panels. So as far as its survivability in space, there isn't too much difference from regular solar panels. It tends to have fine, it tends to do fine with the same temperatures. It can be deployed as a liquid, and it has a longer lifespan atypically compared to regular solar panels.
Mhm. And just to add to that a little bit about the lifespan. So traditionally that's been an issue for perovskites because they tend to degrade with oxygen and moisture, and also just a little bit with light consumption over time. But some of the things we found, we actually reached out to a UNL professor who had some experience with perovskites. And what he told us was that you can like basically cover them in a clear resin that will stop the degradation. And I think that's all we have. So are there any questions from anyone about perovskites?
Metrics, how are you going to measure success?
So one of the ways we can measure success is by looking at how much power it outputs per, like basically the power efficiency. So if we know how much sunlight is hitting the solar panel and we know the area of the solar panel, then we can calculate theoretically how much power is coming from the sun. And then if we take the actual power that we get divided by that, then we get an efficiency percentage.
We want to compare that to the default solar cell also.
So you're gonna have two solar panels on it?
Yeah.
One to, okay. So one's like the standard and the other one's like a new type, and you want to see how they compare.
Yep.
How much of the positioning of the perovskite solar cell and then the regular one would affect, I guess, productivity? Like positioning on the craft. Like how would you 100% sure know that there isn't going to be another factor towards how well the solar panels are working other than whether or not they have the chemical solution or just a regular cell?
That's a good question. I think the way we would do that is looking at some sort of half and half array where we have a control with like normal silicon solar panels and then perovskites, so we can know, like we can directly compare the power output on the same mission from two different types of solar panels at the same time.
So maybe
I have a quick.
Sorry, maybe to piggyback on MJ's question, have you thought about sun pointing? So I think your idea of comparing the two arrays side by side is good, but if you have an off normal sun angle, that could distort your measurement.
Yeah. We haven't really looked into that too much.
That could be something to think about.
Thank you. Yeah, Robert, do you want to talk about the rocket that went up? I think it was in like Germany.
Yeah. I don't remember what year it was, but basically they sent a rocket up in space with some new types of solar cells on it, and perovskite was one of them. It wasn't up in space for very long. It might have only been up there for 7 minutes, but the perovskite survived the launch up there. It collected light when there wasn't light directly from the sun, like from the moon and from other stars and from the earth reflecting light. And yeah, the perovskite did not get damaged on the flight up there, and I don't think it got damaged while I was up there for that time. I wasn't up there very long though.
Yeah.
I want to add to that. As far as the year it was done in, that paper was published in August, so that was this past summer, I think, when that actually happened. But additionally, it went to space. It was a sounding rocket, so it went up and then back down. The whole flight, beginning to end, was like 4 hours. So if we put this thing on our CubeSat and we put in orbit, it'll be the first time we've had a perovskite cell in orbit, at least based on the published literature so far. It hasn't actually been to space for any period longer than a few hours at a time. So it's been tested in space, but that tested in space was really just, does it survive the trip? Not actually, how effective is it compared to regular traditional cells?
Yeah. Caleb had a good question in the chat. He asked, what's the advantage of doing this in space over on Earth? I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the biggest advantage of doing it in space is that the environment is a lot different than on Earth. So on Earth, you have to deal with factors like moisture and oxygen, which might actually hinder the productivity of the perovskite cells. But if you're doing this in space, then you don't have to worry about oxygen and moisture. And so if you can get it to be successful in space, we don't care if it's successful on Earth, right? Because if NASA is doing stuff with perovskites in space, it's easier to just test it in space than to test it on Earth and in space.
I have another question. So I know when you're first doing research on this, the lifespan of these panels was the biggest thing in question. And I guess, could you refresh me, what's the actual lifespan of these panels that has been done before? And if we are building them ourselves, how is that going to affect how long these solar panels can last?
I can answer the part with for the longest one that survived. I don't remember the exact conditions of it, but they had it encapsulated, and I think it went over a year with no power surge. Like it produced the same power output for over a year before it started losing power.
Okay.
Gavin, looks like you're raising your hand. Do you have a question?
Have you looked into using other solar panels? Like, have you researched other ones on this graph? Just wondering.
I mean, we looked into it, but I mean, so silicon panels are kind of our control here. And so if we're trying to get something more efficient than that, there's not really much point going with something that's lower efficiency.
Yeah.
I guess piggybacking off that question, have all the other types of panels here been tested in space?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Kind of a question that was follow up to the previous one that was asked about how long the lifespan for the panels is. So I guess I don't know that much about solar panels and what affects their lifespan and what will cause them to malfunction. But do you think that in space they'd be able to last longer than a year, or if it would be the same?
Oh, sorry, no, you go.
Okay. Okay, I'll go, I guess. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say it might help in space because there's no moisture or oxygen to worry about. Like in general, it's like there's a little bit more temperature variation, but I don't think temperature is as big of a factor in lifespan as things like moisture and just generally exposure to Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah. Like the main concern for lifespan in space would be probably just it collecting too much light at once, but that probably won't be the biggest concern. But so probably it would, since there's less concerns in space that are known about for it.
Yeah.
So
Robert,
you said.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. So you said collecting too much light at once would be an issue. Like it would just get overpowered and it would just fry basically.
I'm pretty sure like if it's collecting like just a whole bunch of light at once for a long amount of time, it just starts degrading itself.
Well, yeah, somewhat. And some of that
Yeah.
can be fixed if you do what's called passivation, which is like basically just making it of a higher quality so you don't have defects. Because the biggest issue is when you have defects, and those defects just kind of trickle down as it gets exposed to more light and as it gets used more. So there's a couple other questions. Gavin asks, was the lifespan thing well kept or set free? Both. There have been experiments where encapsulated perovskite solar panels have been like actually used, and they've been able to generate power for long periods of time without really degrading. But there's also a study where I think it was like 450 days or something. Solar panel was just like basically kept in a box, and it still generated power like the same as it was generating power before when it was taken out. So storage wouldn't really be an issue.
Could I ask another question?
Yeah.
So the solar panel is going to be collecting power. What are we going to like use that power? Or where are we going to store it? Because could like having too much power hurt the CubeSat?
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. I think, and this kind of goes to John McClure's question about replacing the need for a power source for the CubeSat. I think if we had something like perovskites that could generate a lot of power, and they could also, as I think, I don't remember who said it, but one of you guys mentioned earlier that it could collect power on the dark side of the Earth too. We really might not need batteries. Like we might need maybe one battery if there was a little bit lower production on the dark side of the Earth, but I don't think we'd have too much power. And if we did, we could always just not use it. Like we could always just put it through a resistor and dissipate it as heat or something.
I want to also say with that point is with our CubeSat, where we're going to be essentially testing the effectiveness of a perovskite cell, we probably would want a power source, because like there is a chance that it just does, like if we make our own, it just doesn't work for whatever reason. Like this could fail if we don't have a power source to back it up, then we could just lose the entire CubeSat altogether. So for you know, if we're going to consider this CubeSat to be the first experiment using a perovskite cell in this way, we would probably still need, you know, a power source. But like assuming this works, you know, 5 years later, then maybe in the next time around you don't need it, but this time we probably will need a power source still.
That
you also need something to actually analyze, you know, the power output. Other than I guess I'm assuming we're gonna need additional power to make that work, but I don't really know, I suppose. But we'd probably need a power source for this run. Yeah.
That kind of ties in perfectly to my other question is, kind of theoretically, if the perovskite works well but lasts 2 years and it's dead after that, but the CubeSat is still in orbit, have you thought at all what a mission after that might be? That also works in the case that if the perovskite just for some reason doesn't work at all, what is your purpose, and how are you still effectively using those funds that NASA would potentially be offering you?
So, I mean, I guess part of that is the having backup cells sorting like a half and half array. I mean, the secondary mission here is just orbital decay testing, right? So we can always just do that if the solar cells don't work perfectly.
Yeah, and I would say since it's, oh, sorry, you want to go?
No, go ahead. You're good.
Since it is like a technology demo, I mean, there is like lots to be learned in a failure. So I mean, as long as we're still able to get data back, like, I mean, I guess it depends on if we define failure as not getting a high like power out of it, then like, I mean, that still gives us data to work with it. Like,
certainly.
Yeah, that's I agree. I was just gonna say, I guess like if it fails, then at the end of the day, we are just testing a new technology, and if you know, if the thing that we build fails, then that's a failure on our technology. That's still data to be learned from.
Certainly.
But
yeah,
absolutely.
on one of the slides I did not present, there's some extra slides. I, at one point in time, like a whole bunch of different options of just things that could be possible outcomes. Probably don't need to show there anything, but it's just like, even if it does fail, we still have important data.
Yeah.
It's slide 15.
Let me see if you can find it.
15. Yeah.
15. Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk about that, Robert, a little bit?
Sure, I can try. This hasn't really been. It was just, yeah. So basically, one day as I was doing research, I put this together because I was like, I was just thinking could be possible results of what could happen. So 1 through 4, I just put some ideas down of things that could possibly happen. And like what we would be hoping to see would be, it works better than regular solar cells, it has no negative side effects, it stays strong, and it doesn't break before the end of the mission. And then I had, as you see, 2 through 4, what other things that could possibly happen. And then another thing would be like, if the previous guy does break during the mission, would there still be some way to get power? Like, would it still work good, even if it's not working as good as it did to begin with? Because even if it's not working that well, but it's still getting power, that's still telling us that it's, let me rephrase this. Like, say, like when it first goes up, it's giving like 5% more power. Then after being in space for 2 months, it's only giving 2% more power. That's still important data, because
Right.
that'd be still 5 more months better than regular solar cells.
Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the bottom line with all of this is that no matter what happens, and really with both experiments, no matter what happens, we get data from what we're doing, even if it fails.
I kind of just wanted to add to like, even with like the manufacturing, so like even in the case of failure, I think there's still like important data we can release about manufacturing if we decide to go that route. Because as it is now, it's a pretty like high level thing, like only universities or companies are doing this. So if we're able to kind of bring that down and release like easier methods that are easier to understand about how to manufacture this and make it more of like a hobbyist activity that people can do, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah. And kind of. Or
Like, for anybody curious, I found this. It said a lot of companies right now aren't selling the perovskite solar cells because right now, since it's so new, it's a financial risk to sell it because they're concerned about people not buying it, or yeah.
And I had another question, which I answered through some quick Googling, but my question was, what's the current technology readiness level? And it's currently at a TRL level 3, from what I can find. I don't know if what I'm looking at is out of date. Does anyone have any other information on that?
I don't think we really saw anything
Okay.
about URL levels.
Wow, I don't know.
So I guess one thing that really caught my eye as you guys went through this presentation is you were saying that there's the potential for it to still be able to produce some power in the dark. So I think that this is really important and really interesting, right? And new solar cell technology and efficiency, right? That's everybody in space is trying to accomplish that. But I think producing power in eclipse is a big challenge for NASA. And so as you guys think about this, I might encourage you to think about leaning in on how you might take that dark side measurement, because there could be a lot of value added there if you can show like how much power you can produce, right? If you can take a measurement in the dark, that would be a really, really big deal and could strengthen your whole proposal, right? Of like you're comparing sun side power data, but if you can also offer like dark power data too, that would be so interesting. And I think that a lot of the people at NASA, their ears would perk up at that.
For to add on to that, I guess like one way, just thinking of it off the top of my head, to do that is that if it's on all sides of the CubeSat, not only one side would be directly facing the sun. So we just put two of the power checkers and have one on each side. We could see how much power is coming from one side and how much power is coming from the other side. So that would be like that'd be a way to. Yeah.
Good idea, actually.
I mean, again, I think this is where the having a half and half array really works, because we can have like a live control on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can offer one other thought as you guys think about this, you started to talk about power storage, right, and generation and how you manage that. A lot of times when solar arrays, and maybe Beth has more experience with this, but a lot of times performance issues from solar arrays come from heat, right? They get too hot and that's why they stop producing as much power. So when you think about your design, I'm gonna zero in on the environmental control again. Think about how you control the heat both on the array, and then if you're storing power, how much of that is coming back to your CubeSat and how you get rid of that. Because you don't, if these things are as efficient, if you're really producing a lot of power, you're gonna heat up your CubeSat really fast.
One question I have about that, Taylor. So like, and I guess I don't really know too much about like space environments, but if you just have a bunch of heat that's like being radiated from your CubeSat, is that just gonna like dissipate into space?
Yeah. So, right, in space you don't have any convective cooling at all, so it's all radiation. So most satellites use some sort of radiator, right? We put fins or something like that just to give yourself more surface area to dump that energy is, I think, the simplest way that most people go about that. There are more complicated methods, but you're right. Yeah, it's just radiating off.
Okay.
Yeah, I think adding, a heat sink to, and I guess adding on to the idea that was brought up earlier, if you need to get rid of some of that excess energy that you may be, kind of collecting and adding a resistor, I think it would be a really good idea to add some sort of heat sink to allow for that to be, kind of pushed off of the little CubeSat, because I think that's definitely going to be an issue, if not mitigated properly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all know of a? I mean, I'm just asking. I don't know of a way that he can be radiated more quicker, like more efficiently. Is that a thing that exists or not?
You could get a PhD in that topic, I think.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a super efficient way, but that's not my area. Beth, do you have any ideas?
I have some experience doing thermal vacuum testing, and it was actually on one of my big programs that I had to do, but it really came down to even the operators doing the controlling the chamber, they're like, yeah, unfortunately, it just takes forever for heat to dissipate if in vacuum. Really, it's super hard, because again, radiation is pretty much all you can work with there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, some people totally agree. Yeah, vacuum just makes it tricky. A more complicated thermal design involves heat pipes, right? So you kind of give yourself a coolant, it's all enclosed coolant that runs through your system. But for a CubeSat and just the volume that you guys are working in, that could be really difficult to implement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I also had a question about, I don't know if anyone has seen any data on how effective like silicon panels are in space versus on Earth.
Uh, I don't recall. We might have looked at that at some point.
Okay, I can look into it.
Yeah. Are there any more questions or thoughts?
Yeah. So if there aren't too many more questions, since we kind of have run short on time here, kind of our goal for today was to try and figure out which payload we wanted to continue and really continue on and really focus in so we can be ready for our PDR, which is in only 2 weeks. So we actually made like just a little simple Google form. If you could all, like, even people that are not directly on the team, like Taylor and Beth, advisors as well. If you could go fill out the form, we just want to get like a brief idea of what payload we're all thinking is going to be better, as well as just any comments and thoughts of vouching for one idea over the other for now. And I guess just for a little bit of group discussion while everyone's filling out the form, is there any thoughts on, I think, specifically what's most feasible for us to work on, especially from like Taylor and Beth, since you guys do have more experience in this area?
I guess kind of my initial preliminary comments, and I, take that with a grain of salt. I think the mycology and radiation protection is a little bit more interesting. Not that the perovskite cells don't have validity, because, there still is a lot of improvements, but kind of given the nature of what it is, I know we're looking into perovskite cells, 2 or 3 years ago when picking out cells for USIP, where not that it's not worth the time, because I definitely think it would be, but I would imagine that there's probably already some other groups working on that. And I think kind of the novel idea with the fungi is, probably different and may be able to set you apart. But as it was discussed earlier on, if you can propose both, I think that would be pretty handy as well.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Yeah, I think these are both really great ideas. So I commend you all right on doing your research and finding things that are truly beneficial and things that people want to buy into. So it's kind of hard to say. I think both pose some serious environmental challenges, right? But that's what you guys are in the game for. So you're going to have to decide if you would rather try to manage, from my view, you have to decide if you want to manage humidity or if you want to manage heat.
It's like a good concise way to put it.
Yeah, because they're both right. Whichever one you go with, those are going to be, that is the hardest thing about space, right? And then right when you go into industry, managing the environment is that's our whole job pretty much.
Yeah.
Right? Is how do I make this work in vacuum and all of these other things? And so just from a design point of view, those are going to be big challenges. But from a research point of view, I have a really hard time choosing one because I think they're both really interesting. So you guys, that's my thought.
So let me ask a question. One of the things that we keep getting reminded every now and then is that NASA would actually want us to do something that's a little bit simpler. in order to improve the chance of success, that we don't have to shake the world kind of thing. Is there any thought that one or the other project would be simpler and easier to manage to increase our likelihood of success?
Right.
Are you looking for our thoughts on that, Karen, or
anyone's?
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add one thing. I don't know how much of a factor this is, but just in terms of like experience, like we don't really have any mycologists on the team or any like biology students on the team. And like, I know we could probably recruit people who are, but we do have like engineers on the team who have electrical and mechanical experience. And so, while I think that there would be quite a bit of mechanical and electrical work with both payloads, I think that the perovskite one, and I'm not just being biased about this, but I think that it would lend itself more to using our experience where we didn't have to like do a bunch of work outside of our area in biology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's super valid. And again, depending on kind of the exact scope of the perovskite payload, you know, I think that would probably be more simple, you know, if it's kind of just to show like a little bit more validation of those cells in the space platform.
Right.
On that part.
John, what about downsizing the size of the array? So perhaps the cells, the solar cells, manage the humidity, so that you would use that perovskite to actually focus on a couple different ways to manage the humidity. Because humidity is going to take, I would imagine, Taylor, a lot of power to manage the environment within that type of atmosphere, with a lack of, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that going to be more of a power issue or more like a technology issue? I mean,
for the fungi
yeah.
experiment? I think both. Right. Controlling, right. So from a technology standpoint, again, I made the comment that humidity and electronics don't get along, right? So anytime you're introducing humidity, to a space environment, right, you're introducing risk. Most of the time, you try to bake out all of the humidity and water and everything else, right, so that you don't run that risk. But if you have that type of, that's not to say that it's not possible, right? They do it on ISS. People do it all the time, but then you need a lot of power to control that, right? So you have to have containment and management and transfer and everything else. And those things don't happen on their own, right? You don't have gravity to pull water down. If you wanted to do like a siphon idea, you have to push that. And so that takes power. So John, you're onto a really interesting point, right? Maybe there's a hybrid opportunity here. And that's interesting.
Really is, yeah. I mean, I don't know, Joel, I don't know your thoughts on this, but I think we definitely need to, I don't think having two of these is really feasible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're really trying to narrow things down a little bit. I think at least, and you guys please like agree or tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I think both of these payloads are something that is really cool to a lot of members on the team. I think are going to be really cool to the people reviewing our proposal. And I think any place that we need to fundraise, I think in Nebraska, people are going to be interested in both of these payloads. So I don't think we can really choose wrong. I think it's more of finding what fits better for our team and like what's the most feasible, right? And I don't know, they're neck and neck, I want to say. Does that sound right to everyone?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, it is kind of both payloads are both very, interesting and would be great to, pursue. But I think what your team's capabilities are, you just don't want to stretch yourself too thin and try to promise something where it's not able to be done well.
Certainly.
Let me jump in with one other thing, which is, when we talk about all this, we right now we're already on track for a secondary payload where we do an orbital decay measurement thing with Florida and North Carolina. And so we will also be sacrificing a little bit of our CubeSat space for transmitting that data. So we will have, in essence, 2 projects, even if we drop one of these. So if we don't drop one, we would have 3.
All right. Well, I think there's a few people that might want to talk about this kind of independent from, the whole group. And plus, we're getting kind of close to the end of time for our meeting today. Yeah, Caleb, thanks for stopping by. If you have to leave, that's okay. I think we'll probably end off the meeting here for today. I think this was like one of the most productive meetings that we've had so far. I think it was really constructive getting to hear everyone's input on both payloads, especially at Beth and Taylor's. It was great to hear some of your experience, and we were very lucky that you guys could stop in today. But I think...
Can I jump in real quick, Joel?
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
we're gonna stop soon, but you guys did an amazing job presenting. I mean, I have students in my class that I wish did as good a job as you did. You were so organized, and and I'm talking college students, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are middle school and high school students. Please come to my class because it would make me so happy to have you there because you guys did a great job.
Certainly.
It'd be interesting to hear Tara Best just sort of overall thoughts of what you heard and what's trying to be accomplished and how it was done. And please come back again.
Yeah, I agree with Karen. These were great presentations and well thought out, right? You answered a lot of the questions that just as you went through the presentation, right, that people would come up with. So I think you did a good job of anticipating, right, and thinking through the problem. So that is great. I'm excited for you guys. They're both really great ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah, I third that because, everything again was well thought out, well presented, clearly laid out in a way that everybody could follow. And I've been in college and I do agree with Karen's sentiment that some people's, presentations aren't that good. Not from personal experience, but, I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think, yeah, you guys have impressed, I think, all of us so far. Just even like the where some of the presentations have gone from the beginning to the end of this week and some of the practice that we went through. I can't wait to see like what you guys are able to do after a couple years of work. Like you guys will be like running NASA by the end of that 2 years, I bet. And I don't mean that in like a sarcastic way. You guys are truly impressive for college students. I wish like all of you could come to college and be on the AXP team full time. But yeah, just to kind of wrap things up today so we don't go over too long. Yeah, you guys are fantastic, and whatever payload we end up pursuing in the future is going to be, I think a good choice for the team. But I think some of the leaders on the team are gonna stick around and just talk things over so we make sure that we're that we have the connections we're going to need going forward. But I guess, yeah.
Can I jump in? I'm going to say that
Absolutely.
no matter which payload we choose, it's not so much like it's the
Mhm.
power sat team's payload or it's the fungi sat's payload. It's like that now this is our payload.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is just one piece to the whole puzzle.
Mhm.
As Taylor and Beth both pointed out, there's so many other things that you have to put together in order to get to space and all the support around it. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of work to do.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think you guys, if you remember the picture that we had on the slideshow, I think last week as well as the week before that, of the night, but there's like presenting something. I forget exactly what that is, but we're trying to bash each other's like ideas so that they become like harder, more dense, more refined ideas, so we end up with a better product. And ultimately, we're one team for one goal to go to space. But I think that pretty much wraps everything up. Does anyone have any last minute comments before we send everyone away? All right.
Good job.
Great job.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Beth and Taylor, for joining us today. Your experience and your views were very useful for us today, and we hope to maybe check in with you guys a little bit later too.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for including us in the loop.
Yeah, and I think you guys said you might be available next week and when we do our pre-PDR review. And just so you guys, the rest of you know, we have two people who currently work for NASA who are going to be part of that review, just like Taylor and Beth were this week.
Certainly.
And they're both UNL graduates also.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll be in on the PVR call, so I'm
Cool.
excited to see what you guys pull together.
Awesome. Well,
5 people.
Okay,
Yep.
who do you want to hang around, Joel? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think at least the Johns, Karen, Sally, and
So the
I don't-
non-student team members.
yeah, I think so.
I mean, Taylor and Beth, I think if you want to hang around too, you're welcome to.
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Yes.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, I guess
The voting is in.
yeah, I will go ahead and share kind of the results here. I know I sent them to Karen and John. Let me see, copy link. Right, no, that was specifically just to Karen again. Everyone in the meeting now. Did you guys get that link? You can kind of check out some of the responses we got. And you might have to go through them individually because some of them didn't specify which one they were talking about in their comments. Generally, it looks like the team is more interested in doing the power set, which I definitely see. I don't want to like be biased towards the fungi set. I think they're like both incredibly cool. But then I do think we probably have like as a team more people interested in working on more the power set of things. Yeah, I don't know. What is everyone else's thoughts, I guess?
I kind of want to echo what John said before, where as per our skill set, like we're all, physics and engineering people. While I think we could, get help from other people on at the university, as for, creating not only cultivating the fungus, which from what I've heard isn't super easy to do, but also building an environment for it to survive in space in a CubeSat. Not that that's impossible by any means. I think fungal radiation shielding will be a big deal in the future at some point. I just don't know that it's necessarily best for our CubeSat. But so not that it's a bad idea.